This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I mean, it's only been together for, I think, 3 power plays or 4 power plays in like 4 periods. So, but we've, kind of changed personnel a little bit, and it's worked. So it's taken a few combinations, but this one for the last 2 games has really helped us out, and kind of similar to, a set we've had in the past. So but it's worked out.
It's worked out. It's cold. We both have our hoodies on.
Yes.
Was it as cold as you thought this morning? I got out there and it was nippy.
I knew it was going to be cold. It was cold.
It was nippy. And the girls
It
had their
was cold.
sweatpants on going to school with their coats on. I mean, there's
Yes.
no doubt. I had to bundle Enzo up too with a little blanket as we all make our trip to school in the morning. But we are taping this, as everybody knows, and I don't know. I feel like I was expecting more chill, although I saw a lot of
really?
people with hats.
When you're getting in
You
the
know.
30s in
Yeah.
Tampa, even if it's morning, as we speak, it's no longer in the 30s. Well, I shouldn't say that. It may still be in the 30s as we're speaking. As this is airing, it's no longer in the 30s.
That's true.
But, I've got a couple of dogs. They're like, we're going outside.
So do
Care to
dogs
join us?
care? Do dogs care if it's nippy
Well-
like that? Or are they like, let's go?
So Stella, as you know, is a Bernese Mountain Dog. They are, as a breed, a cold weather dog. It's
Gotcha.
like, what are you doing in Florida? So they tend to get more
I gotcha.
energized in the cold. They have a double coat, but our other dog is like a terrier mix. She doesn't have a particularly thick coat, but she had a lot of energy this morning too.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they didn't seem to mind it. I was like, can we get back inside, please?
Listen, I get
I did
that.
have my I put on the hoodie though for our viewers.
The
They can
hoodies are
see.
great.
I got the sweatshirt and the
Yeah.
hoodie and everything.
Yeah, I got
else.
mine too.
I've been known to put on a lightning toque
at that.
when it gets very cold.
A little bit of that.
Keep my ears warm. We
Yeah,
are
that's
just a couple of wimps though, aren't we?
We are. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, look, I used to. This was when I was 25. I used to, scrape the car and the ice away, but yeah, now it's like, okay, well, we're going sweatpants and hoodie, and that's just the reality of the
Yeah.
situation. It'll be cold tomorrow.
It's hockey weather though, to the extent look, if there's weather like this for the outdoor game, the NHL is going to do a happy dance.
100%. I mean, this
I don't
would
know if-
actually.
I
this
don't know
would
if we
actually
can
be
predict
ideal.
what it's going to be like
Yeah.
on February 1st or whatever, but
Have they given themselves the best chance for the weather to be as low as possible?
well, they have
February
that
1st,
makeshift
you know?
roof that they're putting on top of Ray J. I'm probably not saying it right. They're insulating the ice from the elements up until game time,
Yeah, and that makes sense.
and that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, hey, look,
But we got a little bit of time
Mother Nature.
before then.
Mother Nature doesn't stop for anyone, as we know. So let's hope that things work out.
But look, what John Cooper was talking about in the warmth of the media room. when he was
The
asked
warmth
that
of the
question,
media room. I love
He
that.
looked pretty
That's right.
comfortable there.
He did.
But that was after the game the Lightning had against Washington, a game in which they went 1-for-1 in the power play. Then they had the second power play chance at the end of the game. They actually scored on that. It got taken away due to Kucherov being a fraction of an inch offside. That would have been an empty net goal. But they basically have gone 3 for 3 since they've revamped the way that the top power play looks. What's interesting is that on 2 of the goals, Hagel and Hedman, who are no longer on the first unit, have come out as part of the second unit. And they have accounted for assists on
Right.
the Kucherov goal scored in Vegas and the Gensel goal scored against Washington. But Coop was asked about it, and you know what he said, basically? It works, or it worked. There's your answer. So we had taped last Friday's show after the Vegas game. And because we had taped, we'd gotten questions submitted, I think some of them before the Vegas game, and the power play had been struggling still. We had some questions about maybe they should do this, or suggestions. Maybe they should do this on the power play, or what about this on the power play? And what are your thoughts about moving this around on the power play? I'm like, all right, let's tap the brakes on this, because now it is kind of come to life. Let's give this unit a chance to see how they do. And basically on the one real chance they had against Washington, again, it was a makeshift unit, but it scored. Coop is happy. If Coop is happy, the power play is staying put until he feels a need to change up the personnel again. And you heard him say it's a little bit like the setup that we've had before, in that you got a righty at the left faceoff circle and Kucherov at the right faceoff circle. I would say maybe the biggest difference, besides the fact you don't have Stamkos out there, is that you have a righty on defense, Radish.
Right.
So that pass is now open. Kucherov to the point is now a pass that can be one time to the net.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is something that the Lightning would like to have as an option, correct? I mean,
Well, I mean, it hasn't been... They didn't have that option with Hedman out there, and it's not like they said, well, we need to pull Hedman off because we don't have the one-timer. Hedman, a return pass to Kucherov, is more easily than one-time by Kucherov. Radish has to telegraph it a little bit more because he has to open up his body, but he can still pass to Kucherov, and Kucherov can one-time it, for sure.
Right.
I just think that once they made that switch in the third period of the Vegas game, the at-Vegas game, Radish and Bjorkstrand came out. The power play got some mojo, and we can spend a lot of time trying to like pick it apart and analyze it. And sometimes the answer, as you often say, Greg, is the simplest answer. And the solution is the simplest solution here. It worked. Like, they put those five guys out there. I'm not sure they'd actually had those five guys out there earlier in the year because Radish had been in and out of the lineup. And, you know, honestly, Hedman's been quarterbacking, or if not quarterbacking, he's been the one defenseman out there on the top unit. They tried this setup, and it clicked. So if it's clicking, you're going to keep it status quo, aren't you?
Sure.
Why is it clicking? I have no idea.
Good question.
I mean, like, but when you watch it, so what is happening? They're moving the puck more quickly. There's no hesitation. They're forcing the penalty kill unit to react and not have time to be in position to stop whatever it is the Lightning want to do. Washington, in the one kill the Lightning had, or that they had, that the Lightning had the power play in the first period, was pretty aggressive. I thought they pressured fairly effectively, but they still had a breakdown. I mean, for Gensel to be as wide open as he was in front of the net is a breakdown by the Washington penalty kill. So the Lightning deserve credit for, you know, finding a setup that created an open look for the shooter, Hedman, and for the guy tipping the puck. But the other unit, the one with Bjorkstrand and Radish, they have mojo. I mean, to me, it's as simple as that. These are world-class players. If it took this particular setup for them to kind of get the wheels in motion and for them to start playing at the level we know that they can play and reading plays as quickly as they can read them, so be it. But to me, the wheels are in motion. So, you know, until this thing starts slowing down and struggling, I think Coop's going to keep it the way it is. That also means that Radish probably has a path to be in the lineup.
That's probably the bigger point. It's almost like as long as the power play remains productive, and productive meaning too, partner, that you're creating some momentum off of it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not always going to score
every time. No.
Yeah, but if you're at least putting some pressure on the penalty kill and you're feeling good, you're getting some shots, so you're moving the puck around, I agree with you. That might be the biggest thing, at least personally, that Radish can take away from the power play. I mean, the power play is operating at about, what, 14? They're 14th in the league.
I should check.
Think. I mean, I think
I mean,
that
going
number's come
3
up a
for
bit.
4 the last 4 chances.
Yeah. I mean, I think
definitely helped.
I think that's come up a little bit. I guess I still want to come back to an interesting question, and we do have some questions that are trickling in that Steve is providing from yesterday and even today.
Lightning are 20th right now in the power play, by the way.
They're 20th in the power play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Power play percentage is at 18 exactly.
Okay.
That's up. I mean, they were down in the 14 range.
Let me ask you
I
this,
think,
because
heading into the Vegas game.
I do think this is an interesting question, because I think, one of the questions we had coming into the season and looking at where the team is right now, I think we all thought the depth was going to be a lot better. And has the depth played out accordingly? I think to a degree. Maybe the players are different, but the idea of having competition and players that you can plug in and not miss a beat, I think still stands. James and DeStew obviously are the two that we're focusing on. But I think the bottom line for me, and I'm assuming maybe for you as well, partner, is that we thought depth was going to be pretty good. How good was going to obviously depend on the performance of these players. But I think so far it's actually played pretty well. The star players got off to a slower start, but I think they have kind of gotten back to levels we're accustomed to seeing, give or take a player or two that aren't there. Mm-hmm. We acknowledge that, and we've talked about that. I think the two biggest question marks at this point that I'm not sure have been completely solved, but maybe one I have more confidence in terms of it being solved than the other, power play and faceoffs. I think with power play, there are options there and a track record to show us that, yeah, I understand what Cooch said, but at least in the regular season, this power play theoretically should be one of the best in the league. I don't know what to make of the faceoffs, because we can come back and say guys are performing below expectations, and that is fair. But that being said, I don't know if I still believe this is a good face-off team collectively. And is that something we are going to have to monitor? And more importantly, is that something that we think is more of a need with this team than, well, we need to figure out this power play? I think they have the personnel for the power play. I don't know if I'm overly confident this will be a great face-off team. And do they have to address that at some point? Or do people feel like, look, Point's going to get better. He just, even if his track record isn't being an elite face-off guy, he is performing below his expectations. And, wherever Sorelli is. And then, look, Nick Paul coming back, is that going to maybe solidify the third-line center in terms of that? I don't know what the answer is. I guess what I'm saying is, partner, that one to me is a little less of a slam dunk that it's going to get rectified to the point where they're satisfied with those results compared to the power play, which I think has a longer track record of being really good.
Yeah, and this is really going to pain me to say this because I do believe faceoffs are very important. As does Phil. He took faceoffs, and so it's a matter of pride for him, and it annoys him when the Lightning don't do well on faceoffs. What I'm going to say is this. You can have success without being a good faceoff team. You can also have success without being a top power play team.
That is true.
We have talked about that. But it becomes like you're navigating some landmines along the way. So if you're not going to be a good power play team, let's say, you have to do other things really well to offset that. In other words, you can have success with a subpar power play, but it would really help you if your power play wasn't subpar.
That's true.
But it's doable.
Yeah.
I believe the same is true with faceoffs, and I would even rank the power play as more important than faceoffs. So it is harder in a way to overcome a subpar power play and have success than it is to overcome basically being a subpar faceoff team. You can overcome being a subpar faceoff team. But would it help you to be a really good faceoff team? Yes. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. And the power play has had a track record of success even without Stamkos. Last year, they finished 5th.
They did.
Okay.
They did.
Faceoffs are different. Faceoffs, Glendening really helped the Lightning the last 2 years. not just in the specific role that he had, like a lot of defensive zone faceoffs, penalty kill faceoffs, 5-on-6 faceoffs, just generally because he was so good in the mid-50s that pushed the Lightning's team percentage up. Now you're taking him out. And if you're going to go back to a time before they had Glendening, which he was only with the team 2 years, you did have Stamkos. Stamkos is a very good faceoff guy.
He is.
He's turned himself into a very good faceoff guy. He's regularly in the 50s.
Yeah.
Well above, like by well above. I mean, we're talking like 58, 59%, but comfortably above 50%. And, you know, he takes and took, when he was with the Lightning, a fair number of them. So they don't have a guy like that anymore. So it kind of is not shocking that they have a little soft underbelly here. Would it be as bad as we thought it would be through the first, what have they played, 15 games? They're 30th. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Among 32 teams.
I mean, that number's got to get better, right?
They've had some bad games that have really dragged them down, but you know, you look at the individual face-off numbers, which I will do right now, up to date. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure if there's even one person who's taken a fair number over 50%. Let's see. Sorelli, who started badly and then got hot and then has kind of dipped a little bit. I know he didn't play the last game because he was hurt. 48.1%. So maybe I should put it this way. Here are the number of face-offs lost more than one for these guys. So Sorelli, who's taken the most face-offs, has lost 10 more face-offs than he's won. Braden Point, who has taken the next most face-offs, has lost 23 more face-offs than he has won. Yanni Gourde has lost 25 more face-offs than he has won. Dominic James has lost 5 more face-offs than he's won. He's 32 and 37. So, I mean, in 9 games, he's taken almost 70 face-offs. If you're -5, like you can get back close to 50%. Gensel is over 50%. He's 132 and lost 28, but you're down in the, like, you're not talking a huge number of face-offs at this point. You notice Gergensen's has started taking more face-offs than he had before on the line with Gourde. I think because he's having a little bit more success than Yanni. He's -1. He's 126 and lost 27, and then you're down into the guys who have only taken a handful. So the only guy who's over 50% is Gensel, who kind of is asked to take draws in certain situations.
Correct.
Are we shocked by that? When you're pulling out Glendening, who was probably the most reliable faceoff guy the Lightning had on the team last year, I can't say that I'm shocked. I think it's a little surprising that I'm not shocked that they're struggling to find a guy who's at like 54, 55%. I think it's a little surprising to see that all of the main guys are under 50 and some of them are in the low 40s. So you're like, can that improve? You'd like to think that, you know, the guys like Gourde and Point can get up to maybe 47, 48, where Sorelli is. But it may not happen. And if that doesn't happen and they can't address it for whatever reason, then you're going to have to navigate your way around it. But they've done that. I mean, they are 7-1 in their last 8, Greg. So
what do you make of it?
You can win games. Yeah. Well, it just means that, you know, if you lose a face-off, you have to dig in and make sure nothing bad happens. But it certainly would help you to win the face-off. You're going to make your life easier if you can win face-offs.
And when, I think, too, probably,
yes.
You know, if you really need, like you're on the power play and it's late in the game and you've got an offensive zone face-off, I mean, winning that is a bigger deal than,
it is,
you know,
no
somewhere
doubt.
else in the game.
And let's be clear, they're not at 10% on face-offs.
No,
I mean, like, they are winning some.
Yeah.
But you need a money guy. I guess you
That's
don't. I just said you don't need a money guy.
That's it. But
having a
it'd be
money
nice to
guy
have
would
guy.
really help.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
It would.
I
be,
mean, you don't
it
think the
would be,
Bruins? How much of the Bruins' success when Bergeron was not just on their team, but I mean, he was among the league leaders in faceoffs taken as well as percentage.
Yeah.
So, of all the many things that Bergeron did to help the Boston Bruins have success, and they had incredible success during the time he was there, with a couple of exceptions. But for the most part, when Patrice Bergeron was on the Boston Bruins were a playoff team with cup aspirations. And he was in the middle of a lot of what they did. Offensively, defensively, special teams, but face-offs.
Yeah.
They had this guy. It was like not quite like a closer in baseball, but you're like, you need a draw.
Yeah. Right.
Bergeron is going out there.
It's
and he was good enough to win him on his weak side too.
You're right.
He was as close to automatic though on his strong side as you're going to have in the game. And Crosby is much the same way. I mean, Crosby's percentage is not quite where Bergeron's was, but Crosby takes so many that, you know, he's a huge asset. Forgetting everything else that he does, right? It just so happens that like Crosby is like a Glendening, except that he can do, you know, all these other things that are world class, while at the same time winning whatever it is, 56, 57% of his faceoffs. So you don't think a coach would like to have a guy like that to send out? Coop is missing that. He's trying, sure. Right? He has to send out lefties to take them on their weak side in the defensive zone.
No, you're right.
And he had Finley the last game, but Finley was rusty and frankly, just he didn't have a great game. You know, he only won 2 faceoffs.
And I feel like faceoffs, though, that is something that, I mean, Crosby wasn't a great faceoff guy when he started.
Yeah.
He worked at it.
He willed himself.
He really did.
Better.
And I'm wondering, is that kind of...
he took the challenge. Like, he's one of these guys that can win them on his weak side because he'll take him on his forehand.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of like we hear stories about Cooch and training with him, and he'll spend hours working on his weakness, you know, taking a puck off the boards on his backhand or something and doing that for hours.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear some of these face-off guys, they'll spend a whole offseason. Let's just work on my face-offs. I got to get better. You feel like that is something.
That's got to be hard to work on, though, because, like, so look, what Kucherov does is very difficult, but he can practice that drill. Like, and he can have guys, and he does, rim pucks, and he's stopping them on his backhand. To win a face-off, though, like, Kucherov is battling the puck and the boards, but he's not battling another human being, right?
Sure. Yeah.
To win a face-off, you have to be able to control the puck when somebody else is also trying to control the puck. And your opponent on the draw may take a face-off differently. Like, everybody has their own bag of tricks. So in some ways, like what Crosby was able to do, I'm not quite sure how he got better. Because it's not just like standing over the dot and trying to get quicker with your stick. I mean,
like
that's
old
some
school
of it.
Tap your sticks with when you're playing street hockey, you know, and go.
But it's kind of but it's kind of like you need to practice against an opponent, right?
You do. Well, is that something you can practice with one another in the offseason? You know, just say, look, we're going to spend a couple hours here. Halpern, you're going to drop the puck. You're going to
But if you and I were spending a whole offseason trying to get better at faceoffs, and you're only seeing me and I'm only seeing you, that is not going to translate to what happens in a season or even in a game.
Yeah.
You're seeing lots of different faceoff guys with, varying skills.
That's actually a good question.
But also different strengths, right?
Yeah, I actually think that's
some
a good
guys
question.
are quick, some guys are strong. You know, it is different taking a draw against a righty as opposed to a lefty. Anyway,
that would be an interesting question for a coach. Like, how do you have game conditions in the offseason for faceoffs? What do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, because I think
or
you
even
bring
in
up a good
practice.
point.
I mean, Halpern's out there late with the faceoff guys. They are taking them against each other, but you know, Yanni Gourde isn't going to take a faceoff against Braden Point in a game now that they're on the same team again, right?
Well, this question's interesting, and this was from TJ on X. He said, can someone explain why Point is consistently thrown out of the faceoff circle? What are the rules for faceoffs?
So you're not supposed to have your skates go across those hash marks. And again, it kind of depends on the linesman because sometimes they will give the centerman a little bit more latitude. It also can be contingent on if one of the wingers steps in the faceoff circle early. That can get a player thrown out. Those are the two most obvious. You know, sometimes the guys lock sticks, and when the puck isn't dropped and the linesman might feel that one guy kind of initiated it more than the other. That would be a question for a linesman, though.
It is,
but you're not supposed to jump, basically. So if you're trying to jump, you're trying to anticipate. But if you jump and you move your skates across the hash mark, you lean in, you make a motion with your stick and tie up the other person's stick before the puck is dropped, that will get you thrown out.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, I'm not sure that I've seen that Point has been thrown out more than any other Lightning player or more than an opponent. We do get games where it seems like centermen are thrown out more than others, but it tends to go both ways.
I think there's also some inconsistencies, probably with anything, but linesmen and faceoffs, who gets thrown out and who doesn't, because we do see some guys who maybe don't make the first move, but end up getting moved out. And honestly, feels like this as well. Just drop the puck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a big production. Like, what are we doing? And guys, there are ways guys can cheat a little bit still, even though they've tried to crack down on it, where their skates are positioned. You'll notice Crosby does try to position his skates a little differently to give him more leverage, I think, when you're pulling that puck back. But
it's rare that we see an icing where there isn't at least one warning given on the next faceoff, because the centerman cannot be thrown out after an icing. Now, if you get a second warning, it's a penalty. We never see that.
That's a good point.
So it's almost like, why are they giving the warning? They're giving the warning because somebody is violating something. Like players, so that tells you players are cheating, right? Cheating to get an advantage. And after an icing, the linesman knows, okay, I'm not dropping this puck because this one player did something that he shouldn't have, so I'm giving a warning. I think we actually probably see it less when it's not after an icing, where the linesman maybe won't drop the puck, but he won't toss either guy out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
So the icing gives the linesman the ability to say, I'm not dropping it, you're getting a warning, but you get to stay in. I don't think it's their preference to throw somebody out, but they're not going to drop the puck if they see somebody is trying to get an advantage unfairly. If your reaction speed is really quick, though, and you're waiting until the official actually drops the puck, that's fine, right? The one that drives Phil crazy is when there's a clean face-off win. They drop it, it's a clean face-off win, and the linesman still blows the whistle and is like, no. Somebody broke the rules here. We're going to drop the puck again.
I feel like that happens a lot. And
right, but it just tells you, like, why are all these warnings given after icings? Because players are towing the line to try and get an advantage.
D. Slyer on YouTube says, who would Nick Paul replace? Both Gage and James are amazing. So who would he replace?
Well, we may get a clue at practice today. The team is practicing at TGH Iceplex in about an hour and a half. We'll be off the air. But I would expect a full skate because the team was involved in Coop's Catch for Kids, which I guess had a very successful day and event.
Yeah.
They're probably glad it was cold yesterday, but not as cold as it is today. So they probably are glad that they were out on the water yesterday. I would expect a full skate today and probably an optional tomorrow before Lightning and Rangers, who finally won a home game last night. And I don't know, maybe Nick Paul is going to be in the lineup. We'll see. I mean, he's getting very close. And once he gets the green light, I think we're going to see how they're going to work him in. And where. Sure. But also some of it is, the team did practice on Sunday, and there were a whole bunch of guys that took maintenance days, including some of the forwards. So if guys are still battling something, we may not get a full picture today.
I don't think we see Douglas in the lineup. Is Rempe back? Remember, he took a nasty...
Yeah,
he get hurt in a fight, right?
He did. He fought Reeves.
Yeah. And he hasn't been back since, has he?
I don't think so.
I don't know if you the Rangers don't strike me as a team that's like the Panthers, right. So to speak.
Who are next up in the Lightning schedule after Wednesday.
That could be something, but who are you going to take out if you put Douglas in?
Right. Well, if Cirelli is able to return.
If Cirelli's able to return.
Yeah. Finley was in for Cirelli last game.
Right.
If Cirelli's able to return, Cirelli is in. I think the big question as it relates to Paul, at least at the start, Coop is going to mix stuff around. That's just how he does it. Is Nick Paul going to be a winger, or is Nick Paul going to be a center? And if Nick Paul is a center, which center are you then moving to wing?
Yeah.
Those are kind of the 30,000-foot questions leading into integrating him back in, and then kind of just the basic question, who is coming out of the lineup when you're putting Nick Paul in? That's another part of it.
You know, I went back and forth a little bit. I felt like, okay, Nick Paul hasn't played, obviously, this year, and do you want him eased back into the lineup? And if you believe that, do you think playing wing is less demanding than playing, third-line center minutes? Reality tells me, yes, there's more going on there as a centerman because you're doing more things. And so that was part of the reason I felt like maybe Paul would go to your second-line wing to start. But you've heard me say this the last week or so, maybe even longer. I just think James has shown something there on that second line. I think you have something, and I want to see that continue. And
when you say second line, you're basically saying you want James to play wing with Cirelli and Hagel.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Keep Paul at center with Gage and Bjorkstrand. I actually think if guys are clicking, that's a good third line. It's not the same line. I know people want to reminisce, partner, about the Colemans and the Goodrows and the Gourds, but that Paul, Bjorkstrand, and Gonsalves have a little something for everybody on that line. We've seen Paul be dynamic offensively.
Yep,
he's got a really good shot. I think Gonsalves is a playmaker who can back check well, and I think Bjorkstrand could be your quote-unquote pure sniper on that line. I know maybe that's a living in a perfect world, and maybe if you get some of that, it's still decent. I just don't think you're going to tinker with the fourth line much, assuming you're staying in this 12-6 role, because I think they have found an identity maybe quicker than anybody else did, and let's keep them with what they're doing. I understand that the top six are interchangeable, and we've seen guys move up and down. I understand that. But ideally, I think, did we have James positioned as being somebody who was going to be in the mix when the season started? Probably not, but here he is, and I think you've got to work with what you have. And I think he's one of your best offensive players at this point, and I'd like to see him play with skilled players. And I think he's done that. So that kind of answers your question, at least where I'm going, D-Slyer. But I think John Cooper, we all would agree, has some interesting options when it comes to his lineup that we want to see take shape. By the way, tonight, enjoy some Refrum. Smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts. Please enjoy responsibly. Let's get to another question. This is Greg on YouTube. I'm not a fan of Kucherov playing the point on the power play because of his ability to get plucked. This was his language, and unnecessary risky passes. That would leave him as the only defender getting back in most cases, too.
Did somebody suggest that Kucherov should play the point? Maybe. We've had so many questions about the power play. Kucherov at the right circle does sometimes drift to the blue line, and yes, he is the last man back when that happens. But, he's at the circle. I don't think that he's going to take the spot currently occupied by Radish and previously occupied by Hedman. No. Unless they do some kind of a rotation, as they're moving around the offensive zone.
And I think the reason you just gave, Greg, as to why Kucherov wouldn't necessarily be on the point long term, it may happen here and there just based off of how things are shaping up on a particular power play, but there is that defensive component to it as well. I think you like to have somebody back there, at least the D-man, who's not only running the point, but also can defend a little bit when things break down, and I think that's not the biggest reason you see Kuch where he is now, but that goes into it for sure. I don't think you want to have him exposed as the guy back there. I told you, I remember the days of a five-man unit of just 5 forwards. And that was dicey when the Penguins did that. I mean, you only can do that, I think, if you really have just elite players at every position and you feel pretty confident that you're going to have that puck in the own zone for most of the time. And then, listen, if they come back and expose you, perhaps, partner, that's the trade-off that you would take. Let me get to this question as well. Jimmy on YouTube, he says, really like the podcast and the quality of the analysis. Well, we appreciate you, Jimmy. Thank you. Do you know what's going on in Syracuse? He's curious to hear about the guys like Stahoviak, Peltier, players that did well in training camp. We kind of touched on this a little bit. But
they did lose a weekend set at Charlotte. And so I think the record's 8-4 now. But they've had a very good start to the year, and Peltier has been producing points, as has Stahoviak, as has Geeky since he went down, as has Dylan Duke. I think their goaltending has been good. They've had some shutouts in there. I don't know if that's only goaltending. It's also how the team is playing in front of the goaltending. I did see a clip where there was a power play goal and Groshev was the defenseman on the point. That is intriguing.
Yeah.
He's an intriguing prospect. I mean, as much as we've talked about some of the forwards, like Stahoviak, and, I think Peltier could probably help the Lightning if he gets the opportunity to come up. He was another guy at a very good camp, and he's got NHL experience. But Groshev is very intriguing because he is a defenseman who thinks like a forward because he's been a forward
and he can skate
his whole career. That's the point.
He can skate. That's what really draws to you. Look, again, we're talking about this, partner, and you mentioned Peltier. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 guys down in Syracuse who are legitimate players who could come up and probably just not play on a 3rd and 4th line, but if you put them on a 2nd line, maybe you wouldn't be like, that's a little bit of a reach. I think when we talk about Syracuse, not that you're just excited about Syracuse as you are with Tampa Bay, but it is nice to know that you have got options down there. And when is the last time the Lightning have had 6 or 7 players that you could look at down at Syracuse? Oh, by the way, we've talked about Chafee. We talked about Connor Geeky. And, you would think those are 2 guys who would get called up if something happened with the big club because they have the most games played. And I think in terms of talent and what they do would most likely get the first shot back up again. But we just rattled off 4 or 5 other names that you could look at and say, yeah, they're pretty good. You could have that. And does that speak well for Syracuse? You're darn right it does, for sure. And I think for the organization, I've always talked about this, and I think it is an important point. It's not only going to help your team currently on the ice win games. I mean, look, you've got options. If somebody's slumping, you've got to navigate the cap and waivers and who gets sent down, and I acknowledge that's all part of the process. But if you also have somebody who is down there that can come up and give your team some more juice, kind of like what we've seen with DeStu and James, that is going to benefit your team in a huge way. But what it also does is it also allows Julien Brisebois to maybe even be a little bit more aggressive, even more so than what he's been over the years. And he's been very aggressive with limited options, by the way. I mean, it's basically been draft capital when you start talking about trades. Yes, there have been the Radishes and the Kachuks who've been dealt, and those have been noted. But partner, where I was going with this is you've got a plethora of players down at Syracuse right now who I think are legitimate NHL players. When is the last time that really happened with this Lightning organization over the last handful of years? And what I was saying is that gives Julien some options too to get creative if you feel like you really need to make even a bigger push at the trade deadline. We talk about the face-offs. If you've got some guys down in Syracuse who just because of the logjam that's where they are right now and still the mindset of win now, you might be able to get a piece at the deadline who can help you immediately, and you don't have to give up a draft pick, but maybe you give up a player. But because you've built up your draft prospects and your Syracuse roster, that's one of the benefits of having 7-8 guys that you're looking at and saying Chafee can play, Geeky can play, Peltier can play, Stahoviak can play, Groshev can play. I mean, I'm probably missing a couple of guys as well, but I mean, you get the point. Like that's the beauty of all this. So of course you want Syracuse to continue to play well. You want the young guys to continue to put up points. And you want that because it's going to make the Lightning organization better, whether they get called up or if they're able to bring something back in return that helps you win now. And I think Julian is sitting in a pretty good spot. Ideally, he'd like to just develop those guys and not have to do anything. But we know that sometimes, if you want to get over the hump and you're in a win now mode, instead of giving up, hey, my first round pick in 2027, maybe you give up a younger player who you just feel like, well, look, we have 3 of those guys right now, and I can afford to give up one.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process. So we're watching.
Well, there's
a
lot of scouting that goes on. I mean, other teams are scouting amateur players, are also scouting pro players, and pro players include minor league players.
Yeah.
What you are advancing is kind of the Lightning are getting an NHLer, and they're going to have to give something up to get that NHLer, and they either don't want to or can't give up draft picks because they just don't have the picks available to make the move. So go into your depth. And because that other team has scouted Syracuse in this case, they are interested in player X, player Y. Correct. The other part, though, could happen. The other scenario that could happen is Lightning actually make a move off the NHL roster.
Yeah.
And that creates a space for somebody who has showed well in Syracuse. And I don't think that they would create a space without knowing what they've got from that, we'll call it a Syracuse player at the NHL level. They would have to have, evidence that this player would be able to perform the way that they want at the NHL level. But that's what depth does for you. You can either trade the depth or you can trade somebody else and use the depth to fill that spot. So we'll see. Still a long runway before the deadline, for sure.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it's very encouraging. Syracuse has had a couple of not bad years. They make the playoffs every year. And, last year they went out in the first round. The year before they won their first round series and lost in the second round. So they haven't really gone deep. I just feel like this is the first year where Syracuse has kind of hit the ground running. Other years they've had either younger players that are learning the pro game or injuries or some combination thereof. Remember last year they had all these injuries, and actually Lucas Favali, the Crunches broadcaster, came on with us. It was like, yeah, the top line right now is Duke, Gabriel Stutz, and Huutinen. Now, Huutinen was hurt during training camp, so we didn't see him. I think he's healthy again. But, I mean, these were 3 players that were fairly new to the pro game. Huutinen might have played pro.
I didn't even mention Duke, this year.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
He's another guy down there. Yeah.
But that just told you how thin they were.
Right.
Excuse me. This year, to the extent that, they've avoided some injuries, knock on wood, they have players. I think that's one reason why they've gotten off to such a good start.
They do. They have legitimate players, and I think that's something.
And they're not dealing with the sort of like they're starting the season with 3-4 guys hurt. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
This was a couple of days ago. We never got to this question. Anthony wanted to know about the Douglas experiment. He says, Douglas experiment put more pressure on top-line forwards for no reason. We still don't know if Finley can play in the NHL. I think we lost some points because of it. This needs to stop. What are we waiting for? The Panthers game?
Well, at this point, the Panthers game is coming up. So we've kind of addressed this. Let me back up. The team is 7-1 in their last 8. how did he put it? We've lost points because of it.
That is correct.
I disagree. So why did the team turn it around? Part of it was they started playing better. Part of it was their urgency level went up. And usually one will follow the other, right? Part of it was they added the 3 players that we talked about, James, Destu, and Girgensons, who came back from injury. Their arrival to the lineup coincided with the Lightning turning things around record-wise. And I know I said that, like, the road trip, the Lightning didn't exactly, like, dominate any of those games, and I wouldn't say they dominated Washington, but they got points. They, the last 4, the 3-game road trip and then the first home game back after that road trip, they won 3 of the 4. That is very, very good. Prior to that, though, they were definitely outplaying their opponent and badly outplaying their opponent. So I use this expression again. Let's tap the brakes on, like, what are we doing? And this, that, and the other thing. Like, they are working with Douglas. Do I think that he is going to occupy a roster spot, be scratched most of the time, and when he comes in, he'll play 3 minutes a game? I think that is unlikely for the rest of the season, but it's working for them right now. The Finley part, Finley is in a situation where I think the Lightning feel if they try and send him down, there is certainly a greater risk that he would get claimed based on his kind of profile. Younger player, big right-handed centerman with room to grow. There may be a team that takes a flyer on him, so for now, he just has to wait his turn. And that comes with the territory. But what would the fan have the Lightning do? Would they rather have Finley come in for James? I don't think that's happening. Would they have Finley come in for Girgensons? Like, why are you going to upset the apple cart? He's saying Douglas's arrival took away ice time from Finley. I'm not sure Douglas is taking ice time away from Finley. It's really James and Girgensons coming into the lineup, push those other guys down to the point that, they're not playing regularly, and also the Lightning have gone often with a lineup of 11 and 7. There's 1 fewer forward spot. Let's see. Let's see how this continues to play out.
Do you think if we don't see Douglas in the lineup against teams like the Panthers, and when I say like the Panthers, there is an element of physicalness that you could make the argument having somebody like that in the lineup is necessary. If we don't see him in the lineup for games like that, is it time to make a decision? And say,
why would you think they wouldn't put him in, though?
I don't know. For the reasons we're just talking about, like who
I'll
you gonna
say right now.
sit,
I mean, unless
right?
something weird happens, I'd be very surprised if he's not in the lineup on Saturday when they play
I would agree.
the Panthers.
I would agree, but you also understand where I'm coming from. Like the guys who are playing currently right now, I think, and again, they're not all healthy, and we haven't gotten there yet. But if they end up going 12-6 when everybody's healthy and playing, who would you take out? If you're playing one of these teams and you're like, we need an element of physicalness in here. I mean, and this is more of a compliment to what the Lightning are doing, I guess is what I'm saying, is like the forwards, I think, collectively are starting to find themselves here. And look, Douglas could come in easily for, could you say Holmberg, for a game? I mean, yeah, is that gonna ruin anything? No, it's probably not. And so maybe that would be more of the move. But I think if you're bringing in Douglas and you're taking out, and this is not going to happen, but you're sitting a James or even a Girgensons or even a Gonsalves. I may even go that route. I mean, I kind of find that hard to believe, don't you, partner?
Yeah.
Especially the first 2 that I mentioned.
Here's the thing. At the NHL level, the business is winning.
Yes.
It's a little different, honestly, and I spent, 11 years in the minors and 8 in the AHL. So I understand that it is a little different. You want to win, but you also, like, there is a box to check there on developing. It's a developmental league. Sometimes you may play a younger player whose skills are less advanced than a more veteran player. And either that means playing that player actually in place of the more veteran player, or just playing that younger player more than the more veteran player, because part of the job of the minor league coach and the minor league team is to develop the younger players. That does not exist at the NHL level. So when the fan is saying, it's hurting Finley's development, the development time, it's not a priority at the NHL level. You got to put on your big boy pants, and if you have to sit for 15 straight games, that's the way it's going to be. I go back to the bubble. Luke Schenn and Braden Coburn didn't know if they would be getting into a game. Now, they were veterans, and they were pros, and they knew what the assignment was. But they kept themselves ready, and when McDonough got hurt in Game 1 of the second-round series for Game 2, both those guys came in, and the Lightning didn't miss a beat. That's what it's about.
Yep.
So whether it's Finley or Douglas, or there's a reason why teams carry 23, and you only dress 20. And I'm sorry, it is more often than not, the guys that are scratched are usually scratched. That's how it is for most teams, unless there's an injury or the coach has a specific, thought in mind to make a lineup change, maybe to push some of the other guys if they're struggling a little bit. But the Lightning are winning. Like, they've won 7 of their last 8. So there's no urgency to make a lineup change. Now, the power play was struggling, so Coop made that change in terms of the personnel. Lightning have had some injuries, so we've seen some changes in the lineup, but the bottom line is winning. It is not developing at this point. You might say, well, that's not right because Finley needs to play to develop. Okay, but this is where he is, right? He's waiver eligible. So I don't think he's complaining. I mean, not that I've seen him complain, not that I would know if he's complaining, but I see him he's got a smile on his face. He's working hard in practice. He's staying out there late, usually on the ice early, being a good teammate.
Yeah.
I think he understands.
I mean,
this is where he is, right?
Yeah,
for
sure.
In the course of his career.
And listen,
this is, and let me just say this is
Yeah,
different than James Wright in 2009, where the Lightning were so mesmerized by his performance in the preseason that they kept a 19-year-old and played him in the NHL before he was ready and hurt his development. I think we can say that with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. He should have gone back to his junior team. That would have been best for his development. Actually, they probably would have loved to have sent him to the minors. They couldn't do it because he was 19. Finley is in a different boat. Like, Finley's been a pro player for, a handful of years. That's why he's waiver eligible. This is where he is.
That's fair. And I think also, too, I think your point about the development side is a very good one. And I think every player, there is a ceiling and there is a floor, too. And I think with Douglas, is the ceiling lower? And by sitting as much as he has, are you not hurting his development as much as somebody else who probably is more of a high-end skill guy that needs to be in the lineup on a consistent basis? Like, would you be taking this approach with Connor Geekie? I don't think so, right?
But Geekie can benefit because he's in his second year pro.
That is true.
Can benefit from getting exposed to what he's getting exposed to at Syracuse and in Syracuse.
That is true. TJ says Finley tackling Wilson was epic and sent a good message to the bully.
Yeah. Well,
I
don't know if it sent a message to Wilson, but it sent a message to, I think, the other Lightning players that Finley is willing to do this.
I give him credit for doing that. I'm not going to blow something up that's anything more than what it is. But I mean, look, Tom Wilson, next to Ryan Reeves, in terms of the fighting, is there a more feared guy in the league? And when I say feared, I think there's a legitimate chance when you drop the gloves and fight that guy, you're going to get bopped. I mean, it is dangerous. There's no question. So challenging Wilson's a big thing.
Yeah, I wonder if we have seen. We'll have to tap into the fans' knowledge, and there are players that have done it. But a fighter that plays as well as Wilson does, and maybe you shouldn't even call him a fighter anymore, but he's an exceptionally talented fighter. I mean, when we say he's tough, like toughness is not just the willingness to fight, although that is a big part of it. He will hurt you in a fight, and he has before. So he's probably one of the top fighters in the NHL still, even though he doesn't do it as much. But he is also among the fighters in the NHL. I'm not sure that there's a more skilled player or well-rounded player. I mean, he could be an all-star if he never dropped the gloves again. That's how good he is. Because he does have a physical presence that he brings on the ice. So now I'm thinking like Rick Tocchet, maybe. I mean, Tocchet was pretty tough, but also very, very talented player on the ice. So they've been out there. But in this generation, I'm not sure. That's why you keep referring to him as unique, Wilson. He is unique. So like you compared him with Reeves. Like Ryan Reeves, like a great teammate, but I mean, Ryan Reeves isn't even in the, same planet as Wilson in terms of like beyond the fighting. I mean,
100%.
That's probably not putting it quite well, but you know what I mean? Like Reeves has an ability to do what he can do. Wilson can do a whole lot of things that Ryan Reeves can't do beyond,
And Reeves, to his
fighting.
credit, has hung around.
He has hung around.
And he's found a way to stay in the league. I guess what I'm trying to say is for Douglas.
But he's a guy who, with most teams, kind of like Douglas, or maybe this is where Douglas aspires to get, will be a guy that, depending on the lineup that the other team is throwing out there, he'll be in and out of the lineup, at least at this point in his career.
I think that's what I'm saying. Like the Lightning, I think, are willing to sacrifice some development for Douglas because maybe
he's 25 though.
He
Greg.
is, but he is what he is. He is what he is.
If you believe that you develop at the minor league level, I mean, he's had 5 years in the minors,
right? I mean, there's no question. That's why I said his ceiling is
right.
It's low.
Now, Phil has said to me, I think he said it on the air, but for sure he said it to me off the air. He would love to see Douglas, kind of get to the next level in terms of his skating, which he thinks would really help him. Is that development? Yeah, I guess on some level it is, but some of that is his own work, right? It's not learning the game. It's not understanding kind of how to fit in and what your role is going to be in certain situations, which is really what we're talking about when we're talking about like developing in the minors. It's learning how to play the game.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
At this level.
It feels like Douglas's role in the NHL is going to be that last forward.
Mm-hmm.
If, I can't see him playing regularly at this point, at least on this Lightning team. And by the way, this is a hard roster to crack.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and I don't know if that's an indication that that's a knock on Douglas. I mean, if this was a team, let's say like San Jose a couple of years ago, when their record was awful, could you see Douglas in the lineup on a more consistent basis because there was an opening maybe there?
Right.
You're playing for the Lightning. You're not, I mean, like I said, who are you taking out? So I get that. And I think Anthony's point is, why is he taking up a roster spot? I think the way you have to look at Douglas, he's here for a very specific need, and it's a luxury that they can have. Because I think they have their roster set with the forwards that are going to play on a regular basis, but they have what we call as an insurance policy. And if they need to play Douglas 10 times a year, partner, that's probably what his role is going to be for this team.
Yeah.
And by the way, would he like to play more? For sure. But you know what? He'd rather be in the NHL.
And this is what being a good teammate is about.
Yes.
It is about Finley jumping on Wilson.
Yes.
When Wilson checked Hagel. It's also understanding that, you put in the work and, you bide your time and you give the coaches every reason to put you in when it's time for them and they decide it's time to make a lineup change.
That is correct. That is correct. All right. That is going to wrap it up for us on our taped show today. More
Yes.
informational break as we're off the air, and we'll talk about it tomorrow as the Lightning take on the Rangers.
That is a
which we'll get into.
nationally televised game, I believe, as well.
So
We've
what-
had a
what do you
few
tell
of
me?
these recently.
What time's the puck going to drop? Because that's my biggest thing.
Well,
All right, what time
it's
we
actually,
going?
I think it's 1 minute earlier than
right.
normal.
Steve
It's
did
still
send that
after
out.
7 o'clock, but instead of 7:07, it might be 7:06.
Ooh, all right.
If you're
cut
coming to
down
the game,
analysis.
be in your seats by
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
But listen to us on your way, sitting down, and you'll hear some good breakdown of the game. Partner, we'll be back at it again tomorrow, noon to 1. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll get a guest. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see.
We'll do a deeper dive on the Rangers.
Yeah.
As well.
Interesting team. At Bolts Radio, if you want to send questions in, you can. Partner, I will talk to you tomorrow. Great job.
Talk to you tomorrow.
As always, stay warm. Thanks to Steve Ersnick for producing. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.